Hey, my name is Dan Woodcock, and I pastor Cornerstone Church in Gadsden, Alabama. And today I'm going to talk to you about why small towns are important right now. As of 2019, the U.S. Census Bureau reported that of the 19,500 incorporated places in America, 76% of them had a population of 5,000 or less people. Now, when you include populations of up to 50,000, that jumps the number all the way up to 96%. I live in Gadsden, Alabama, where our population is a little over 35,000 people. I live in a county with just over 100,000 people. So how can a small town like yours and mine make a big impact? You know, it's not like guys are knocking down the door to plant a church in a small town. It sounds so much cooler to say, hey, I'm planting a church in California. I'm planting a church in New England. I'm planting a church in fill in the blank with whatever large metropolitan city. There's just nothing that's really attractive about planting a church in a small town. But you know, the last time I checked, planting a church wasn't about being cool. Planting a church was about obedience and doing what God has called us to do. Maybe you're a pastor of a church in a small town right now, and you feel like you can't do anything big because you lack the resources to do anything like that. I want to tell you two things today how your church can make a big impact in a small town. But before I tell you these two things, you've got to know your demographics. A little over 10 years ago, Dollar General was looking at the way they were doing business, and they realized their business model wasn't working. They had to close over 900 locations, and they lost a lot of money. And they decided to do a demographic study and change their business mindset. And so what they began to do was target communities, target small towns. They wanted it to be a place that not only were things affordable, but it had an eclectic array of things that you could come in and buy. And so you fast forward the story to today, they have over 16,000 locations across 46 states and did over $27 billion in revenue. You've got to know your demographic. Now, if you don't know the demographic of your own town, how are you gonna reach the people in your city? If you don't know like the nuances that make your town different, the little quirks and the ticks that make your town special, how can you reach people in your city? I live in Etowah County, where we have one gospel teaching church for every 300 people. Welcome to the Bible Belt, y'all, where the gospel is everywhere. But the sad reality is 8 out of 10 people don't go to church anywhere. I mean, and that's saying 20,000 people go to church. And honestly, our demographics show there are no numbers to substantiate that. So what did we do? We began to target the unchurched in our community. We began to target the de-churched in our community. And we said, we want to give people an option that they're not used to. We're not just this small country church. And because we gave people a different option, we began reaching people in different ways. Because we live in the smallest geographical county in our state, we're able to draw people from all over our county, and we even have people who attend our church who are from outside of our county. It's truly amazing what you can do when you know your demographic. We can do things here in Gadsden that people have never heard of before. As a matter of fact, for one of our Easter outreaches, we did a helicopter egg drop. Yeah, I know, I stole this idea from some of you guys watching this right now. We did a helicopter egg drop. I had to meet with our city officials and sit down with them in a meeting and show them the plastic Easter eggs with candy in it to let them know we weren't dropping real eggs from the helicopter. It was going to be a safe event. And guess what happened? We had over 2,500 people show up to this event, and it was incredible. All because we knew our demographic. So here are the two ways you can make an impact in your small town. The first thing is this: be in your community. You've got to be in your community. I love how the Apostle Paul says this in the New Testament: I am all things to all people. You've got to learn to love the things that people love to do in your small town. I live in Gadsden, Alabama, and I can promise you I am learning really hard to be like Southern, y'all, all right? The only thing Southern about me is Korean. Well, people around Gadsden and in Alabama in general love to hunt. I've never hunted a day in my life until I lived here in Gadsden, and I started hunting, and guess what? I fell in love with it. I can talk about it, and I can even hunt in my own backyard. College football, here is king. Hashtag national champs. Anybody? Ohio State, you watching this? People here love outdoor stuff. Our city is located right on a big river, and we have trails everywhere. And so I kayak, I trail run, and I fish. I love this town. I eat local, I shop local, and our church partners with local stores. When you're in your community, you can impact your city in a greater way. You can get access to local leaders that people who live in large cities don't get access to. You're gonna be able to leverage your influence with people in your community. We're able to do huge community events for our city just for families, no strings attached. And you know what happens? People remember that. And when they have a time of need in their life, if they're gonna check out a church, they remember us and they show up. You know, we're one of two places in our entire county that feed people more than one day a week. And guess what happens? Other churches and businesses have partnered with us together to reach people for our city in this feeding ministry. It's truly amazing. And when you're in a small town, word travels fast. So when you're in the community, you make a greater impact. The second way you can impact your small town is to go the long haul. You're gonna have to go the long haul. Longevity builds credibility. The longer you can be somewhere, the more credibility you're going to have, the more influence you're going to have in your community. So you've got to learn to be planted where you are. Now listen, people know, they're not dumb. They know if you're just a guy who's showing up and you're just waiting for your next bigger and better opportunity. It takes commitment to be planted in a small town. And when you go the long haul in your small town, people are gonna know who you are. As a matter of fact, when I go places and I tell them where I'm the pastor, they'll say, hey, isn't that the church where everyone checks in? And it's true. We have so many people that check into our church on Facebook. And this is a funny but true fact. I happen to be the only Asian pastor in this entire county. All right? People are gonna know you the longer you stay somewhere. Being in a small town takes intentionality. Your church may never be the top 100 fastest growing churches in America. Your numbers may not be flashy, but you'll be making an impact, one life at a time. Right now, you are training the next generation of leaders in your church. They're in your youth ministry, they're in your children's ministry, and the longer you can stay there, the more influence you're gonna have in their life. Because this is the truth about small towns. Not everyone who grows up is going to stay there. They're gonna move off to college, they're gonna move out of town for some other job. But the longer you're there, the more influence you're gonna have in their life, and they take that influence with them wherever they go. Small towns are an overlooked mission field. So what would happen for us who are pastors who had this renewed sense of passion once again for our small town? What would it look like for those of us who are pastors, we're intentional about sending guys to plant churches in smaller communities? What if you guys who are church planters didn't look at just like the city name, but began looking at the needs of a community? What would happen as we began reaching people in ways that we never thought about before? America is now the third largest mission field in the world. And the way we're gonna reach America is by one small town at a time. You know, the way to grow bigger is actually to think smaller. Guys, we already do this in our churches. We know that the larger our church has to get, the smaller and more intentional we have to be. We do this with small groups or Sunday school classes or however you facilitate community in your church. Maybe it's time we look at small towns the same way. So why are small towns important right now? I mean, I think a better question is, why did small towns ever stop being important? It's time to stop neglecting what is so easily overlooked. And when you begin to care for your small town, I think you'll be a lot like Jesus, because he was from a small town too.